right, I think that we are live. So thanks everybody for joining us today. My name is Liz Eggleston. I run Course Report, which is a resource for choosing the coding bootcamp that's right for you. So the plug that I give in all of our webinars is to check out Course Report, use our directory of coding bootcamps, read reviews from alumni, find student and instructor spotlights on our blog, and you can watch all of our webinars like this one. So in the past, we've done webinars about acing the technical interview for a junior developer position in general before. And I'll put the link below if you want to watch those past videos. But today we're going to be diving into a really specific type of interview, which is the .NET interview. And our guest today is Bobby Davis. So Bobby is a serial entrepreneur. He has decades of hiring experience. He's been leading technical talent for decades. And Bobby kept sort of running into trouble finding fresh talent for two of his companies. And so he decided to start training developers himself, which is how Coder Foundry was born. So Coder Foundry is a coding boot camp based in North Carolina that focuses on teaching .NET and Angular JS. But in addition to learning those frameworks, Bobby helps train students on how to win the technical interview because Coder Foundry does a lot of good work on job placement and technical interview training as well. So Bobby's worked as a .NET developer. He's hired and he's managed a ton of .NET developers, and he runs a school for training .NET developers. So we're really excited to have him talk with us about the .NET interview. So hi, Bobby.
Hi,
thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful.
For the great intro.
Yeah, of course. So I gave a little overview, but tell us what you were up to before you started Coder Foundry. Tell us about those companies you're running.
Right, yeah, so I'm running two software companies. One is a standard .NET consulting shop where we write custom code for developers or for other projects. And then we also launched a product company in '06 called Advanced Fraud Solutions, which we do check and credit card fraud, and we're 500 customers in about 48 states. So all of those things had to say we needed technical talent. We started interviewing people and realized that there was a depth of talent, and then a lot of people didn't have great interview skills. And so from that, we launched Coder Foundry so that we could train people better for the jobs that are needed, and then hopefully place them into work, and then bring some of those into our other companies.
What is it? So you're still running those two companies while you're running Coder Foundry.
Exactly. Well. So yeah, it's a busy week. Yeah. So but yeah, we basically have three companies that we're running right now. So I'm still involved in placing and hiring and evaluating .NET talent.
And you've hired some of the Coder Foundry graduates into those jobs.
Yeah. So I think Bill Gates said it best: eat your own dog food. So what we do is we just basically we can put them through the paces for 12 weeks while they're here, and then find out if they're a good fit for either Cortex or Advanced Fraud Solutions.
Cool. Awesome. How many students have you hired?
I think we're going on in the last year. I think we've hired 6 people. Out of Coder Foundry?
In general, do they do as well as the people who have a ton of experience, or as well as CS graduates at least?
Yeah, so there's a myth, I think, and when you talk development managers, hey, I'm looking for a junior, a mid-level, or a senior. A lot of times in the small companies, you need people that code, and really the mid-level is how much you want to pay for someone. So in here at Cortex or Advanced Fraud Solutions, once they come on board, they're expected to perform their duties. So yeah, everyone we've hired out of Coder Foundry is still with us, so we haven't fired anyone. So that means that Coder Foundry is working for us, and it's working for them.
Cool. Okay, so you sort of mentioned this, but tell us a little bit about the roles that you have hired developers for when you are hiring for your other two companies.
Yeah, so we're trying to do what the classic is mid-level to senior level .NET developers. But deeper than that, we're looking for people that have actually built things before, and so that means they can build things for us. So the pure CS graduate that's coming out with zero real-world development experience, we're not too interested in. And we need people that have come out of a boot camp or something like that have actually built applications from the ground up.
Does it mean that you have to have had a job as a developer before you apply? No.
So the 6 people we hired out of Coder Foundry so far didn't have any previous development experience.
Cool. So there's a difference between having experience in developing products and having a job as a developer.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So just on a more in a more general, like high level view, what types of companies typically hire .NET developers?
Yeah, so yeah, .NET is what we call in the enterprise, and so you're looking at your large corporations, and then all the way down to your medium-sized businesses. Are typically running .NET in their shop to build like a web application, or sometimes what we call internal line of business apps, or even their products that are facing customers.
Cool.
So we help people on the advanced fraud solution side. They're building our products that we sell to customers.
Okay, cool. Are those types of companies, like in general, like what is the culture like at a type of company like that? Is it similar or different than like a Ruby on Rails shop, or are there any differences?
I don't think there's any difference between the cultures. I think that all companies are different. Yeah. But we do know, and you could probably talk to a lot of development managers, you do have to have a culture that is that's conducive to development. And so a lot of them want, they want to work from home some. I need some flexibility in my schedule. Not all .NET developer or any developers ever want to be in the office at 8:01 or you're in trouble. They want to be having some flexible schedules, things like free lunch Fridays, which we do here, free sodas. There's just a lot of things. And so all these cultures, regardless of where you're at, they're kind of similar what everyone's doing because we need to attract and maintain.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the job trends for developers in general, if you look on Indeed or any of those job sites, all obviously development jobs are highly sought after, but .NET is a particularly highly sought after skill. Why do you think that there's that talent gap right now?
Colleges typically don't teach .NET. They don't do it, and so like
what do they teach? Like if you get access to a like programming language in a CS undergrad, like what are you learning?
Usually Java. You may see some other scripting things like PHP or Perl.
Okay.
And so that's what they're learning, and not that you can't transition over to C#, but it's better if I can pick between the two. I'm gonna pick a person that knows C# versus, hey, I know Java, but I can transition to it.
Sure. Okay, so let's dive into some like specific interview tips.
Sure.
I think those are really important. So tell us first about some of the top like mistakes that you've seen developers make during a technical interview in your experience.
Right. So the biggest thing from the technical interview, obviously be on time and all those kind of things that are standard interview fare, is they don't talk about things they have built. And so what we do is we train them in Coder Foundry is that you have to talk about your code. Okay. And so what happens, what interviewers do, and we all do it because we don't have a lot of time, is we'll go to the internet and say, give me the top 50 C# interview questions. And we print that off, we walk in the room with it, and we start going down what I call code trivia. And so and you're testing, can he remember the answer to all these questions? And what happens to a lot of developers is the interviewer may ask a question that is completely obvious to them, but it's not apparently obvious to the developer, or maybe asked wrong. And because they miss one of the code trivias, they can't work there. He says, I can't recommend to work here. He didn't know this. And so what we teach them to do is you have to take control of the interview by saying, hey, that's a great question. Let me tell you how I solved that with an application I wrote. And let's talk about the application I built.
Right. No, I think that's really good advice. What are some of the so obviously you shouldn't just Google, the top 50 .NET interview questions and then try to memorize them all. That's probably not going to be good advice. But what are some of the more theoretical topics that someone could expect to see in a .NET interview? Thinking about object-oriented programming concepts or value types or.
Yeah, they're going to ask you, I guarantee you can go to any .NET interview. They're going to ask you, give me the 4 access modifiers in an object, And so, the answers, are private, public, and blah, blah, blah. And so while some of them may be able to answer that, it still doesn't demonstrate whether you can code or not. A better answer would be, I was creating an object last week, and I had to make this public because I wanted the person that's consuming this to be able to, call the function. And I made it private because I didn't want people to call this when they consume my function, And so that way you demonstrate a knowledge about the topic instead of just answering with an academic answer.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Have you noticed that a technical interview will change with the company? So does a company usually ask about like the technologies that they specifically use, or like how can you sort of predict what subset of questions you're going to be asked?
Yeah, so like what we want to do is, our goal, we teach our students, is you're going to run into what I call code trivia. That's what's going to happen. Your job is to not answer all of those questions by making them talk about the application that you've written. And so like when they ask, hey, or date time value types, what they're really looking for, do you understand that date times can't be null? And if they are null, how do you make them nullable in .NET? So that's what we're asking. And a lot of times you talk to a junior guy, he may know the answer to that, but he doesn't know how to relate that to that question sometimes. And so what he can say was, well, I wrote this bug tracker application and we had date times. Let me show you how I handle date times in that application.
Yeah.
And maybe that'll answer your question, And so that's how you kind of answer it, but also demonstrate better knowledge.
Yeah. Okay, what if you get stuck in a situation where like the interviewer is asking you about a specific .NET skill that you do not have, or like you don't even know the word that they're talking about?
Right. So what you can do is you still got to point them back to your applications and say, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that directly. And then hopefully you can somehow relate the answer to something you've already done. Because really what we're looking for is, can you build the application? And a lot of times if you think about it, the short-term memory of the 50 .NET interview questions doesn't really demonstrate if you can build an app or not. I mean, it doesn't. I mean, maybe we can say that's a good determiner. And most interviewers, you would talk to them, they'll walk out of the interview and they'll say, hey, I think you can do it. Pretty sure he can. He seems smart. Let's hire him. But you don't know for sure, but it'd be better if, hey, you know what? He built this application. I like it.
Sorry, I have to speak to a different part of the office.
That's okay. No problem.
Okay, I think that's all really good advice. So what should a new developer bring to their first interview? Like, do you bring a resume? Do you bring your portfolio? What's important? Yeah,
so the biggest thing is if you're obviously if you're coming out of a coding bootcamp, whether Coder Foundry or anywhere else, and you've never had a development job, your resume isn't going to help you a whole lot. You definitely have to bring it because that's what we do. We interview people with their resumes. But you need to have a portfolio that you can show them. And typically the best way to do that is say, bring a laptop, or hey, can I show you my portfolio online and show you these apps that I've built? And what you can do if you did that before they even asked you a C# interview question, you might can circumvent the whole process and get them talking about your app and talking about your code.
Right. Have you seen interviews over the last, how long have you been in this industry?
For Coder Foundry?
Yeah.
In Coder Foundry, we've been only doing this about 18 months. But with .NET, I've been interviewing people since we opened up in 2002. So it's been a long time. I'm getting old.
Have you noticed that the interview has sort of changed over the last 10 years, gone from being more whiteboarding to maybe more practical, taking people through your portfolio? Or
so a lot of times they're what they're doing with whiteboarding is they're trying to get you to talk about code, and so you could, if they want you to whiteboard a particular solution, you can do that. A lot of times you have to do that. We teach our people there that you have to learn how to draw a database diagram on a whiteboard. You have to learn how to kind of diagram an object, and those types of things. So you definitely need to be able to do that. The other thing that we're seeing what employers do is giving out code tests, which is, again, they're just trying to understand, can you code or not?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So when you do bring your portfolio, what types of projects should you start with? Are there things that you shouldn't show an employer? Are there types of projects that you should definitely make sure that you show a future employer?
Yeah, so I think anything that demonstrates what I would call the 3 phases of an app, which is something that's secured, something that uses a database, and something that's displayed on a web application. So you have all 3 phases of the application development, and that could be anything. I mean, you could secure your movie collection, or you could secure anything like that. What you shouldn't show is someone's system that you built that's proprietary.
That's
So
true.
yeah, it's like, hey, we're looking at this other person's system. That's not cool. Are you going to show my system when you go interview somewhere else? So
yeah, that's true.
but I would show my own things that I've built.
Right. What if it's something in a language like if you're going into a .NET interview and you have, you know, an application in a different language, like, is it still worth sort of showing off that you?
Absolutely, because we do know that if you're a really sharp developer or you're building things in code, I mean, like learning a new language isn't as daunting as you might think. I mean, a lot of them, if you're really smart, you can probably pick up, you know, you can move from Java to C#. You can learn the different JavaScript frameworks, you know.
Right.
So it's not that hard, but so demonstrating your code, definitely, that's what you need to do. Just talk about your code.
Right. Yeah, that was one of my questions, because I hear a lot, especially in the bootcamp world. Like if you go to a Ruby on Rails bootcamp, you can, you know, still get a job like in Python or in a different object-oriented programming language. Is it sort of similar? Is .NET similar in that way, or will it take a little bit longer to?
No, I don't think so. I mean, like, so like you can move around. There's a ton of opportunities, and then there's just the ecosystem for .NET right now is so big anyway. You're not going to have to usually make those decisions, but if you do, I mean, you know, in the enterprise, yeah, you're going to look at Java. So C# and Java are very similar. So I think you can make that transition very easily.
How does Coder Foundry like specifically prepare your students for those technical interviews? Are you all doing like constant whiteboarding, or do you reserve it for part of the week, or do you not?
Yeah, so every Monday is an interview session. So
okay,
like we interview every student every Monday. And so what we do, we've broken our curriculum into 1 week sprints. And so not only do they have to technical interview, they also have to demonstrate and show us what they built during the last week. And that's kind of like where you check in with the development manager. And so we teach them how the job's going to be. And that allows them to get used to demonstrating software, talking about your code, and then answering tough technical questions, you know. And then we grade them every Monday and say how you did, work on this, you need to work on that a little bit better.
Cool.
And we get increasingly harder and more technical with the interviews as we go through the 12 weeks.
Do your students, when do they start interviewing? Like I'm sure when people graduate, everybody experiences a little bit of like imposter syndrome. Like when are they ready to sort of start going on their first interviews, or should you start before you even think you're ready?
Yeah, so what we try to do is we about week 9, we are already engaging students in interviews. That's what we try to do. We try to line up, and it doesn't always work out this way, depending on who's hiring or not. But we try to have interviews before they graduate.
Cool, awesome.
Yeah.
What are some of the companies that Coder Foundry students have gone on to look at?
So it's been a lot of them, you know, just all over the board. So in North Carolina, we have a lot of companies you may not know the name of, but they've been in manufacturing, they've been in medical services. Obviously, we've hired a bunch. You know, so those kind of companies. We've worked at financial companies, financial institutions have hired them. So they're all over the board. And we're actively engaged with companies trying to find them opportunities.
The whole course support team is behind me. Okay, cool. So if somebody wants to learn more interview tips from you, I see the link in your profile below. Where should they go, and what is Coder Foundry /new job get them to?
Yeah, Coder Foundry New Job gives them all of the tips and the things that we're doing in the 12-week class to help them pass that technical interview. So like the main thing we teach them is talk about your code. You've got to have a portfolio if you want to pass. And then we also go into things like, you know, how should you dress, you know, that kind of thing. Because
wait, how should you dress, Bobby?
Well, like one of the rules is and I won't name him, but a kid came in to interview and he's wearing flip-flops, you know, and so like that's casual, and it's a little too casual for an interview setting. So what we counsel students on is that you can't overdress for an interview really, except maybe if you're in a tuxedo. You know, I mean, but so like, you know, a suit and tie works, so a blazer and a tie works. And if you don't know how to pick out an ensemble, just go with a white shirt or ask someone in your near circle and say, hey, what should I wear? You know, but ties work, even if the organization at the end of it is going to be casual.
Got it. Yeah. Can't overdress.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything that we totally missed that you wanted to share with people about the .NET interview specifically?
No, I just hope that they'll go there and look at it, you know, because we want to see people succeed. Our industry needs developers. We need all the boot camps we can get to start up and train people. And so hopefully they can take these and run with it and start a new career. That's what we'd like to see.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Bobby. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Those tips were amazing just for like the interview in general, but also specifically for the .NET interview. So yeah, so we will see you at the next webinar. I think we're going to do another one with Coder Foundry as well. So we'll see you at the next one. Leave comments with any additional questions that you have, and we'll
very good.
We'll see you at the next one. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bobby.
Bye.